What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me, my two great co-hosts, Federico Perez and Ralph Hanna. And guys, here we are, another episode, another week. We finally had the Libertadores and the Sudamericana group stages kick off. A lot of expectations for several teams who are in this competition. We'll talk about what happened there, and also what's been going on in the local league, because it seems that with these changes with coaches and some players trying to find off. Some form, we still have a tight race, but it could indeed end very soon, actually, with only, I believe, 7 games left to go, starting this weekend. So obviously we'll talk about that, but I got to go first to Fede because, we won't talk about this too much, but you feel like over the last week, it's been sort of a debate about, going back to the Paraguay national team, because obviously we're about a month or so until the final list, and then obviously 2 months exactly, almost 2 months exactly until their first game against the United States. But you feel as if though for those number nine strikers, we've been seeing a lot, and I kind of want your opinions on all that because we've been seeing Pita scoring, we've been seeing Alan Barreto scoring for Boca. We've obviously been seeing many players. Avalos, obviously, he scored for Independiente against Racing last weekend in the Clásico de Avellaneda. So there's a lot of names going on, and a lot of people trying to put themselves in the list. A friend of mine was joking me. It's like every goal feels like it's their last one ever scored, because they know that they know every single performance and every single goal is going to be judged on whether or not they can go to the World Cup.
Everybody's trying to push their place, right? Hi, Roberto. Hi, Rob. Hi to everyone listening to Guarani Vision. Great to be back for another episode. And yeah, everybody's been talking about certain players, especially here in Paraguay. Everybody's been following, for instance, what Adam Barreto has been doing in Boca. He's been really on a really good run ever since taking over that spot. He's been maintaining that starting role, and he's been consistent, right? He's been scoring and he's been feeling important in that team. He fit right in. I would say in Boca Juniors, it's good to see that. I also saw Damian Bobadilla scored this week for Sao Paulo, so we had a couple of Albirroja players scoring, but definitely that center forward spot is something that we're gonna talk about here until the World Cup. That goalkeeper spot also, but if we're gonna talk about who's gonna score the goals. We don't have Tony Sanabria paying that much, so we definitely need a backup, or we need two, three backups. I would even say. I don't know if the spots are really that available. Talking from what our coach needs to do in the sense of making up his mind of he's gonna take right to this next World Cup. I do think Alex Arce has always been one of his favorite players in that spot, so I do think he's gonna be in the World Cup list at the end of it. But then you have other names, right? Players that have come in, that have come out of the list, that haven't been there lately. Pita, you mentioned him. He's been injured most of the at the beginning of this year. At the end of last year, also he had another injury, so he's been in and out. But all of a sudden, he starts scoring, and now you're looking at him differently. And they are that kind of player that I particularly like, that we saw in several qualifiers of, taking over in that first half and just going all out, fighting against the center backs. And I kind of want to see a player like that. If it's going to be either Pita or Adam Barreto or somebody else. There's even people pointing here in the local league. Why not Adrian Alcaraz, who at a certain point was also called up to the national team. And he's been regular in Olimpia scoring and being important in that team. I don't know where Alfaro really is going to go in that sense. He's been looking into a lot of the young players. You're also seeing, for instance, Lorenzo Melgarejo, the striker, the Libertad striker. He's already 35, but he is the top of the league striker here in Paraguay. So why not for him also to be considered? He at a certain point wore the national team jersey, even though we haven't seen him for in a long time. But he's definitely also on a scoring streak. So you're following all these players that are pushing it, Roberto, to see who can make their dream possible. It's gonna come down to Alfaro, but we have all these players really showing up in a very important time, as we're already on our countdown. Everybody's looking at the calendar day by day. We're really thinking about the World Cup that's really coming up soon.
Some people are already doing their lists, actually. You can actually make your own list. I've seen some websites. I think it's Transfer Market or something. So if you guys are listening, you want to do your own sort of do your own sort of like World Cup squad list, you can do that over there. That's what I've been doing. But Ralph, yeah, no, that brings up a good point. I mean, we always talked about how, we're happy we're not Alfaro in terms of making decisions, one, to start players, and two, obviously, to call them up. So for a situation like this, having to make the decision, and he's been in this situation before. Like I said, he coached the World Cup with Ecuador, so he is going to have to be the bearer of good news and the bearer of bad news to the lucky and the unfortunate players for this World Cup sort of roster. But yeah, it really feels as if though now, for the next month or so, it really is going to be a case of like who finishes strong and who's in a good position, and of course who's still fit because obviously, knock on wood that there are no significant injuries, then we can have the best step possible. But, it's probably going to go down to as well as fitness because you feel as if though one small injury like right now can really affect, your World Cup chances basically.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's the negative side that maybe no one wants to talk about, but the reality that Alfaro will have to be looking at. He's also thinking about maybe he has his squad that he wants to take, but he knows get 2 months from now, especially with the amount of games. I mean, we're going to talk Copa Libertadores and Sudamericana today, so that's just adding in the games. We see Strasbourg are going deep in the Conference League, so Julio Enciso was playing yesterday, so that's, he's playing lots of games. Gustavo Caballero has to finish up the season with Portsmouth. It's a long season, the championship. So, I mean, there's so many, variables and things that could happen. I think what's really interesting though is the debate between, I guess it's between Avalos, Pita, Barreiro, and probably only one of them, one of those three can go. And at the moment, Avalos looks like the guy because he just started against Morocco. That really puts him in a great position. Is Adam Barreiro has to come back into the squad. He's doing everything he can by scoring all these goals with Boca, and I think maybe for Alfaro, ex-Boca as well, knowing the pressure, knowing the kind of thing that everything that's around Adam Barreiro as well, not just having to score goals, but carrying some of that pressure. He might like that, thinking about the World Cup. But then you've got to see the Rapita who's doing it in Brazil. He scored against Flamengo. I mean, who are in the Club World Cup. He's scoring at probably a high level. Right now, Brazil is a higher level than Argentina. So that gives him a really good shout as well. I mean, there's a lot for him to process there. But I think if I was Alfaro, I wouldn't be too worried about what kind of nine I want. More, I want which nine is going to make Julio and Ciso play best. So that was really interesting. I think in the Morocco friendly that he almost played a 4-4-2 because he was like, I think I can play Enciso as a partner to Avalos, and he tried that. Um, and then is that going to work for me better than say having Enciso just dropping back a bit? Because when he drops back a bit, then I don't know how I can fit in Diego Gomez. So I think if I was building this team, I'd build it around Julio Enciso and Diego Gomez, those two players, right? And so it's maybe finding the striker that works best with him is the way. And that's, I think it's a fair thing to say because Enciso's such a rare talent and a good player, and he'll be the one, and we saw this in the friendlies, he's the one that really makes the difference that can break down teams. So maybe Alfaro is also looking at that. It's not how good you are, it's how much you can complement my star player.
I agree. I agree. It's going to be an interesting sort of couple weeks as to see who really is going to win the race and who's going to be actually willing to be part of that World Cup squad and who deserves it basically. So it'll be interesting to see. What has been interesting also this week has been obviously the Copa Libertadores and the Sudamericana as the group stage started this week, and obviously we've had our Paraguayan teams participate. I guess we'll start in the Sudamericana because that's where we have that was where we start I guess from a more positive standpoint, because basically both the Paraguayan teams got results. The first one, of course, at home, Recoleta hosting San Lorenzo. San Lorenzo, of course, of Orlando Gil. Really interesting game, Ralph. I'll go to you on this one. It was a really interesting game. Adam Wilk scoring the first ever goal for Recoleta in an international competition. Obviously, it was their first ever game, so he makes a bunch of history. But 4 minutes later, San Lorenzo tie it up. But I gotta say, I feel like it's a positive result. Yes, it's obviously difficult in the sense that like, hey, listen, like this is a tough group, and when you have teams like them and Santos, and they were Cuenta who beat Santos on the week, you feel like every sort of missed opportunity is there for Recoleta, but for their first ever game over there, the Defensores against San Lorenzo in international competitions, I think they passed the test.
Yeah, I agree. Funny thing for Recoleta, right? They beat San Lorenzo at the weekend. That's, of course, Sportivo San Lorenzo from Paraguay. And then they had to play maybe the authentic San Lorenzo, let's say, or the classic San Lorenzo and the Defensores del Chaco. And it was a good game, and I thought Recoleta did really well pitching themselves against, one of the grandes from Argentina. And we talked about it in the last show, like how are they going to find really points, or how are they going to survive in this very difficult group that they've got themselves into through, well, they didn't actually win against Nacional in normal time. They beat them on penalty. So it's like, wow, this is now a real test. And yeah, I thought they played well. I mean, Wilk has been on fire. He started the season, I think, 3 goals in 3 games. Then he got injured. Then he came back in. Maybe it took a bit of time, but he scored two at the weekend against San Lorenzo, Sportivo San Lorenzo, and then again, he was on target early on with a really well taken goal after great work by Aldo Gonzalez. Aldo Gonzalez, I thought, had a great game on the left-hand side, really took the game to San Lorenzo, wasn't scared. And so it was a good performance. Maybe the negative was that because they scored very early on, I think within 15 minutes, but then they conceded almost immediately, and you thought, if they had just maybe been able to settle for 5, 10 minutes, frustrated San Lorenzo a bit, then it could have been a whole different kind of game. But because San Lorenzo got back into it straight away, it wasn't that feeling that they were having to then, okay, chase the game. Because again, an away draw is not so bad for any team in any of these competitions. At the very end, I mean, San Lorenzo could have won it, but then at the very end, Alan Wilk could have won it, and it was the only save Orlando Gil made the whole match. He only faced two shots, right, both from Wilk, and at the very end, Wilk does. I haven't seen him do this really, like with the footwork, but his footwork was so quick to beat a player inside the box, and then he had the finish, and he tried to do the outside of the foot, the three toes, tres dedos, and I don't know. I mean, it was a nice height for the goalkeeper, let's say. It's still a great save by Hill, because anybody shooting at you inside the box when they've got all that space and time, is you have to pull off a good save. But you felt with Wilk, you're like, oh, he's such a good finisher. Maybe that was the chance, and that could have won it at the death, and that would have been huge, because remember, there's the win bonuses. So CONMEBOL announced all the bonuses, crazy money again, prize money. I think it's over $200 million they're giving out in Libertadores. But in Sudamericana as well, you get a win bonus. So if he had scored that goal, that would have been a lot of money, a big windfall for Recoleta, which we've talked before is a small club in financial terms. It would have been a huge moment. But great result, I think. And that will have put them in this situation when they said, okay, maybe we can do something here. Maybe we can actually dig out some results and get some respectable kind of moments for Recoleta, and it's not just going to be going through the motions and not being able to compete. I think they really showed they could.
Yeah, they barely got through, right? To this stage, I mean, by penalties, leaving out Nacional, which was probably a surprise to most people here, because Nacional had a really good roster. They really got ready. They just let go of their coach kind of because of that situation, because they weren't able to go through Recoleta in the first round. And now you're seeing this Recoleta team play important games in their history. You look at the recent history for this club itself. I mean, 10 years ago, this club was in third division, and not long ago, just 2, 3 years ago, this team was in second division, and now you're seeing them play in Sudamericana, so it must be very special for them in every sense, even for the coach that has a very interesting story, the way that he's been able to come about. And this Recoleta, I mean, they got their style. They like to play position football. They like to play attacking football. So I like the way they play. I like the way they approach games. And I'm always rooting for them, because they play fast football. You always see players fit out there. You don't see players that are, that are not ready to play, and I think that's also has to do with what the coach has brought to this team, and the player selection. Even there's still players that were at a certain point in second division, like with Frido Baez. He's actually the captain of this team. He's played in the lower divisions. He even played in third division, and now you're seeing him play in Sudamericana, and he's always making a difference. And he became eventually a first division player, and he's not the only one. They also got these young players, like Ralph was mentioning. Alan Wilk has been killing it this semester, scoring important goals for this team. And Aldo Gonzalez always making a difference. I like his story also because he comes from a small team like Resistencia, played in Tembetaru before, and now you're seeing him finally having his breakthrough in this Recoleta where he's been playing these last couple of seasons. I also want to stand out Jose Espinola in the midfield, all these young players that Recoleta could eventually sell and make money. I think Recoleta right now, maybe that's their plan, right? Not getting to the latter stages, but have a respectable Sudamericana, make themselves know, and maybe even break some records, guys. I was actually surprised to see the president player on the list. He wasn't in the bench, but he's available to play the Sudamericana. He can't play first division football in Paraguay, but all of a sudden he can play Sudamericana. That was actually very weird for me. Luis Vidal, the president of Recoleta, apparently wants to break a record. He's 51 years old already. I think we mentioned his case before in Copa Paraguay games and stuff like that. But in San Lorenzo, they were all talking about this situation. Is Luis Vidal, the 51-year-old president, actually going to play against us? He didn't do it, but the coach, Recoleta's coach Gonzalez, mentioned that he eventually could come on for one of these games in the group stage. So I don't know. That could be very interesting, and we might even need somebody from these record things to come to Paraguay and sign up Luis Vidal, because if he comes on with 51 years old, he's definitely going to catch people's attentions, guys. I don't know what you guys think about it.
That would be one for the history books, Ralph, wouldn't it be? For you're working at Guinness. I think it'd be one for the ones to check on if that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think we mentioned it before that he was a very keen like amateur player. He was a very good amateur player. He used to play, I think they call them like intercolegiales in Paraguay, like the inter-school tournaments. But I mean, those tournaments get big. The other day I saw one of the teams, they had about five, six ex-players because all their kids go to the school, you know. So it gets competitive, and always did well there. And remember when he made his record in Copa Paraguay? It wasn't just he played, he scored. He did actually score a goal. So yeah, watch out for him. I'm like watching that final group game. I don't think he'll play in the first five matches. It's going to be symbolic, but keep an eye out. I think he might come on in that last game, and like we say, it will make history because nobody over 50 has played Copa Sudamericana. I think the record probably is Roque Santa Cruz. He's definitely the oldest scorer. But I think, probably I don't think there's been a player older than the early 40s before in Sudamericana.
Yeah, it'll be very funny and also very interesting to see. The other team that did well in the Copa Sudamericana was, of course, Olimpia, the leader of the current Apertura. And obviously, many expectations are coming from them, as always, into such a game like this. Fede, I'll go to you on this one because obviously it was a match that obviously Olimpia needed to impress from the first step. And they did that. They did that. They beat Alex Italiano over there in Chile, goals from Ruben Lescano, the 24th minute, and then Juan Alfaro in the 35th minute. Two assists from Romeo Benitez, by the way. Definitely an impressive player. But yeah, this is the best way for Vitamina Sanchez to really get his team on the right foot, and he did though in the right way.
They really handled this game. They handled it really well. And it's a very good result because you saw the players that have been standing out in the local league also stand out in this game. I'm talking about Gaston Olveira, for instance. He had a very decent game, and we're always looking at him differently because he's on that race to the World Cup also. I was kind of surprised because of the team that he put out there, right? Because you saw Fernando Cardoso on the right back. He's been kind of a player that he's been using when he has injuries. He can play, as a winger. He can play as a right back. He can play in the midfield. So he definitely chips in different games. He even came up on the Super Clásico in a big game, and he used him on that spot because he's been rotating players. He doesn't have a starting 11, guys. I mean, that's been kind of the style also for Vitamina Sanchez. I mean, he wants to put players that are fresh, that are 100%, and he goes day by day, and he knows that he can get anybody injured at any time. He doesn't want to lose any players, so he's always thinking about that situation on his planning. And because Olimpia has a very tight schedule from now until the World Cup, he's gonna keep on doing this. And good goals from Ruben Lescano because he's been having trouble in that sense in the local league. He started out hot, but then he got kind of cold in that sense. So it's good for him to bounce back and score a goal like this. But the big surprise was, no doubt about it, Romeo Benitez. He hadn't played these last couple of games, and all of a sudden he's a starter now in the Sudamericana, and he made the difference. He was in both plays where this team scored. So good for him to show up because Ivan Leguizamón hasn't been consistent. He's been having trouble with injuries, and you know that this coach loves to play the 4-3-3. He loves to play with wingers, so you definitely need fast players that can go one-on-one on the sides, and Romeo Benitez is probably one of the best in this roster, one of the best in that sense in this team. So really happy to see him in that sense, and a good price also for what he's been showing so far for Alfaro, right? I mean, Alfaro, ever since he came to Olimpia, now we're talking about Richard Ortiz, Alfaro, and who else? He really took over in the midfield, and he's been fitting in very well in this team, and he's been even becoming this more attacking player that we didn't see that much in Nacional, where he was probably more the balance in the midfield. Now we're seeing him, getting the box, having opportunities, and he even scored in this game. So good for him. As for the defense, there's always trouble there because they have a lot of injuries. You don't know who's going to come in. It was Vargas and Betaveri this time around, but everybody's been contributing. Even Chala, right? That he really, for me, I don't know how much he's done to really earn the spot, but Alan Coyote Rodriguez has been injured also. He's been in and out. They want him 100% for the games that are coming up. So you need Chala, and he's been getting ready, I believe, for these kind of games, and he kind of showed a decent level. So overall, I'm happy with Olimpia. This is the Olimpia I wanted to see. Win no matter where you play. Be a big team in the Sudamericana, because that's what people are expecting here. People are expecting for this Olimpia that has been so far the team of the year in Paraguay to do the same thing in Sudamericana. They have a really good a gap between right now in the Apertura, so they can really focus on this Sudamericana and try to go for that first spot, guys. And I see this team, this group, totally wide open, especially with this result. You already won your first away game, so this just gives you confidence for what's coming up.
Yeah, a great game from Olimpia in the sense that if you check the XG, you will see they actually lost on XG. So you'd be like, whoa, maybe they got totally outplayed. But you look at the game itself and you break it down, and really, Audax Italiano they came out very strong at the beginning. I think they have a shot in like the first minute, and then Olimpia really just sucker punched them on those two chances with Romeo Benitez. And to Fede's point, I did do that little take, was like, oh, Romeo's still there with Olimpia, right? Oh yeah, because he's not one of those players that's already always playing, and he's unfortunately suffered a lot of injuries. I mean, when he was at Guarani in this competition in Sudamericana, he was doing excellent, and you're like, this guy's going somewhere, and he did. He went to Brazil, but he always seems to struggle a bit with injuries, and he's come back. It reminds me a bit of Fabrizio Peralta, who's come back from Brazil to Cerro, because maybe sometimes that when you up it a notch, it can get hard on the physical side, but the quality has always been there, and you saw it, especially in the first goal. I thought that was a great move to break down and get the pass across. So for Olimpia, I mean, it was those two key moments, and then I think they have another good chance, Aldex. So they're still trying to get in the game. Pulls off a good save, Gaston Oliveira, who we talked about. He's had another clean sheet, right? He had one at the weekend as well. Don't forget, at the weekend they won 3-0 against Nacional. So they're really keeping those clean sheets and starting to make wins. But the really interesting thing about this game, talking about the XG and Aldex Italiano were ahead, was when you actually look in the second half, they hardly did anything. And particularly their last shot on target is in the 60th minute. In the 61st, Vitamina makes his subs. And when he makes his subs, that's it. Game over. They're 2-0 up. That last 30 minutes, they see it out. They just manage the game so well. One of the big changes is Fede was talking about the defense. They had to play Fernando Cardoso right back because Raul Cáceres wasn't fully fit. But actually, Cáceres comes on for that last 30 minutes. And that really just helps, I think, settle the defense. He's been one of their best players, I think, at the back this year. So it just shows they have that squad and that rotation. And for Alfaro, yeah, it was really good to see him playing a bit more attacking, because I've seen it, when I go to watch the games live, which I can't do much anymore, but I remember watching him at Nacional with his agent. I was next to his agent, and he was like, watch out for him. He's very technical. And I was like, he is actually very technical, very good, but he was playing defensively, because I think at that time Nacional had Carlos Arrua, who was more of the attacking guy. But you were like, yeah, there's something in this. Like he can win the ball back, but he can actually dribble, he can do stuff. And so it's nice to see him being able to play a bit further forward with Richard Ortiz kind of being the anchor man there. So I mean, it's all looking good for Olimpia. Weekend comes up. Rubio knew the team that nearly beat them, that couldn't quite beat them, but nearly beat them in the first round of the Apertura. But you can't see them dropping points at the moment. They're just looking really, really strong throughout the lines.
It's going to be interesting to see how they can, incorporate all that into, the league as itself, because obviously, they are trying to compete on all fronts on that. And in the Libertadores, obviously, we saw a bit of a different sense of the Paraguayan teams, and obviously, we'll talk about the first one from Ariel Holan's first international game with his new team, Cerro Porteño. They were coming off a good win on the weekend, obviously, to, boost, I guess, the feeling when they beat Dos de Mayo 3-0. So you think, okay, maybe they have this optimism heading into Sporting Cristal, and it didn't go the way. It went to Sporting Cristal winning 1-0, Vistu with the goal in the 82nd minute. But Ralph, everyone's talking about the boneless, if I want to say, to put it bluntly, boneless and lightly, of course, a decision and attitude from Cecilio Dominguez to get himself sent off.
Yeah, I mean the game really turns on that, right? I mean, firstly, I'll just talk through the lineup because I think a lot of people are excited that it was like Cerro, like the shackles are off in terms of foreign player restrictions. They can play all these players that they can't do in Primera. Who's he going to put? And interestingly, in midfield, he kept his same two, which he obviously likes now with Paredes and Pires Tamota. So Holland put that against Dos de Mayo, and he kept those two guys who are both Paraguayan. But then, he wants to play Alan Sonora. So we see Sonora again, who had a good game against Dos de Mayo. And he wants to play, of course, Cecilio Dominguez. Cecilio's been one of the best players for Paraguay, sorry, for Cerro this year. He's on some of his best form, and he was playing well, the game. He was taking on players, he was making it difficult. But then I don't know, he just has this moment of the only thing in his defense is the guy jumps. So technically, I mean, when you take a throw on, jumping right that close, but it was the way he did it, you knew he was going to get sent off because uh, he didn't like give any time for the player to get back. He was just trying to argue. You could tell he had been getting heated up, right? And so in that moment, he's just like throws the ball at the guy's head, and the referee doesn't have much. There's not much option really. You can't book them for that. You can't be booked because you've thrown it in his head. So I mean, it's the same if you kick the ball at someone's head deliberately. You're just going to see red, and so that really changes the whole game because in Cerro the way Holland has set up that team is very attacking. So with 10 men, you're just going to struggle. And so he tries to make some changes, but I think, I think Cristal are a good enough team at home. Well, they went at home because they had to move the stadium. But, in Lima, they were a good enough team that they were able to see something out. And you just felt like they were gradually knocking at the door, and the goal finally comes. And of course, it's Yotun. Yotun has always played well against Paraguay and against Paraguayan teams, and it's him that puts in the cross for the goal. And yeah, it's not a disaster, firstly, for Cerro, because losing away is never a huge disaster. But it was that game you were targeting in terms of the away games where you could get something from it. So they put themselves in a really difficult spot. And really for Cecilio Dominguez, he has to think, I'm 30, he's 30 now, or over 30. I'm like meant to be a leader of this team. I shouldn't be the one making those silly mistakes, which costs 3 points in this case.
Yeah, now you have to win in Barranquilla or you're gonna have to win in Brazil. Those games look a bit harder than this one, right? Cecilio Dominguez, guys. You were a bit soft on him, Roberto. I thought you were gonna go all out. I don't know why this player always has these childish episodes in his career, right? These mistakes that you just don't get. Even though I'm on the player side in some level because it is South American football, guys. It is Libertadores. Let the players do some things. I don't like, how tight it's been with with the judges in that sense. They're always looking at VAR. They're always looking at the little details. They're always looking to send off players, and we've been getting a lot more red cards. We've been getting more penalties because of VAR, and that's a reality. And players have to get adjusted to it. You can't make these kind of mistakes. You can't throw a ball at a player's face like he did, even though you're angry because he's not giving you the space to play it off. I mean, you can't make those mistakes in games like this, especially when you've been out of the team at the beginning of the year because you weren't fit. You've been in and out of the team ever since you came to Cerro Porteño. So in big games, you got to make the difference. You can't make these kind of mistakes. And now you're out of it. Not just against this Peruvian team. You're out of the next two games. So they lose a very important game. They lose their number 10. Iturbe is not 100%. He had to come in those last minutes, and he came out pretty banged up after this match because I think they even took some risk on him. He did not look like he was ready for it. So if you don't have Dominguez out there, if you don't have Iturbe and Sonora, who's been the guy that apparently Ariel Holland wants to use now to make plays and to kind of handle the ball more, if he's not 100% because he's not being consistent with Baba, he barely played with the last coach. So are they really going to rely on these kind of players? Can they really rely on anybody right now? Because everybody looks so fragile. Everybody gets injured all the time. So I don't really know where this Cerro Porteño is heading. I don't know where they can head as, in the sense of trying to build up a team. They've always struggled in defense. They had to use Morel as a center back because they weren't going to use Luciati, who hasn't played a single game all year. There was even rumors that he was going to use Luciano again after so long, and you already bring in Sonora, who barely has a rhythm out there, and you're going to put another player that has barely played. I don't really know what the search is right now for Ariel Holland. I understand he barely had time with this team. He's barely been able to practice it, but he has a lot to work with, and definitely the factor for me is just try to stop the injuries, guys. I mean, you have to go at least 2-3 games without getting an injured player because if not, it's just all gonna fall apart. Now they got to focus on the local league. I don't see them making it through in this Libertadores. Just the way they played this game, and because I thought that this was the game they needed to win, and they didn't even draw. They lost this match. So for me, it looks really bad. Junior is a really good team. Palmeiras, no doubt about it, is probably going to have that first spot. So I don't know. I see the Cerro Porteño aiming for that second, maybe Sudamericana. After what I saw from this team, I don't see them in Libertadores. I don't see them with the quality to even make it through out of the group stage. The champions, the 2025 champions, look really bad this week in Sudamericana.
And this is after the first week, Fede. Wow, you're going all the way in saying that they don't have the quality. I mean, it's still a long way to go, but the fact that it does get tougher as the path continues. I mean, I don't want to say you're bold in that sense, but you're really going at them right so far after the first game.
I seen these kind of mistakes come back around in important games. I remember Enzo Jimenez, everybody pointing fingers at him after he made a mistake in a Libertadores a couple years ago. This could happen to Cecilio now, right? I mean, after what happened in this match, he didn't want to see a single word. He posted something on Instagram saying he was, that he was very sorry to the fans and everything, but it's already done. And now they're going to have to figure it out without him. Just like Ralph said, he was actually starting to pick up the team. He was starting to be the difference maker again. And now you're not going to have him. And Big Eddie hasn't been showing up with the goals either. So I don't know. I really don't know where Cerro can rely and where they can actually think that they can go through, that they can do something against Palmeiras, for instance. They don't have a strong team right now. They're even playing Velasquez as a right back. I mean, ever since Ariel Holland took over, he's been trying to change way too much in a very short span of time. So I didn't think he was going to do this so quickly. I didn't think he was going to mix it up. He was going to change it up so much. And you got a good result against Dos de Mayo, but when you needed to take it up, when you needed to show international level, you made mistakes, you didn't score, and you lost your first game. So for me, it was a very disappointing game from Cerro Porteño. So they pretty much lost all the confidence that I had on them for this group stage. They started off really bad, and I don't see them making it, Roberto. I'm putting my foot down on this one.
Ralph, are you going to give up on them right now?
No, I mean it's the hope that kills you. So yeah, I wouldn't give up on them yet, but they have to get a result. I mean, they have to get a result in Junior in Barranquilla, but their next two games are the home games, right? So is Junior at home have to win. Palmeiras, you can afford to lose maybe, but we saw Junior got a tie with them, right? So maybe they need to try and get a point. But yeah, there's still a chance, but I mean, they have to win that next game at home to Junior Barranquilla, or then they're fried. They got no choice. So yeah, they put themselves just in a really difficult spot, which is what they did before, right? Losing at home these games. I think they lose or they tied with Cristal. They tied with Cristal at home in a previous group stage. So I mean, they're just making it difficult for themselves. But yeah, I've still got hope, but it is the hope that kills you.
It's gonna be very interesting to see what happens there. And obviously another team that we had to talk about that was also disappointing, Ralph, was Libertad. Libertad traveled all the way to Caracas to take on Universidad Central, and it wasn't all good for Chiquiar's team. They lost 3-1 on the day. It obviously looked like it was going to be a draw actually after Melgarejo's goal, but then two goals in the last few minutes got the win for the Venezuelans. I mean, this is a bad first step for them in that sense. Comparable to Cedro, it's not looking good for them, especially with, let's say a tricky group in that sense too.
Yeah, it's really hard to what to make of this Libertad team because they started very badly this season, but you were like, this is normal with Chiquiasi teams that he's gonna install a way he wants to play, he's gonna get the players he wants, and he'll let results slide. And then they won 4 games in a row, starting with the 7-0 against San Lorenzo. So you're like, okay, they're getting back into it. But then when they lost that game to Cerro, which was a crazy game, right? The 3-2. But when they lost that game to Cerro, I'm just looking now, they've now lost 4 of their last 5. So they're back where they started in this way of things not working out. And the teams Cheeky is picking up sometimes I don't know what to say. I mean, you go to Venezuela with a right back who's 17 and a center back who's 18. So that's a big question mark for them. And then at 1-1, you look at the subs. I'm just going to bring it up here because I was looking at this yesterday and couldn't believe it. It's like you bring on a 20-year-old, a 17-year-old, you're taking off, Melgarejo is 35, you're taking off, Campuzano, Espinosa, you're taking off like experienced guys, you're putting the young kids on. He did bring on Carrizo, okay, who's got some experience. But he like lowered the average age of the team to see out a 1-1 draw away. And guess what happened? You conceded 2 goals in the final minutes. I mean, we just talked about how well Olimpia managed the game after 60 minutes when they were 2-0 up and just didn't let Audax have a shot after their substitutions. And Libertad went the other way. And I don't know with Cheeky because he's a great coach. I mean, he is a great manager. He's won so many titles at local level, but he has these moments where you think he is clearly seeing something no one else is seeing, or is he being really stubborn with certain players and like forcing the young players at the sacrifice of results because I get some of these players, especially Pedro Villalba that came on, he's going to be a great talent. He already is a very top player, but he's 17, and so to throw him on, is it the right situation? And maybe in the long term it's good, but short term they're losing these games. And again, we talked about Cerro being in a difficult position. You lose your away game in Venezuela. That's the most winnable of the 3 away games you have. So now Libertad are in a really difficult position to try and get out of their group.
Yeah, especially when you have injuries that have kind of stacked up, right? Just when you brought in important players and some of them were starting to make the difference, like Allen, for instance, he was very important in certain games in the local league, and Alan Benitez all of a sudden is not available after playing those games for the national team. So they lost another one, right? They had already lost important players at the beginning of this season. So I think, the whole plan, the whole strategy for Chiqui Arce kind of fell apart already in the sense of the team that he wanted to build up. So now he's going the other way. He's thinking about, okay, it might be a semester to promote players. It might be a semester for these kind of young players to gain experience in a Libertadores like this one, and maybe not aim for the title, right? Unless, something magical happens and all of a sudden this team starts clicking. That so far it hasn't happened. So far we've seen a team that has really struggled, and I'm not convinced at all from what I'm seeing from this Libertad side. But definitely it's going to be, in the long term, we're going to be talking about this was the season that Vidal, the right back, got promoted. This is the season that we're seeing Fernandez, the center back, getting minutes in there because of the injuries. And maybe these guys in a couple of seasons, or maybe at the end of the year, are important transfers for this club. That's what they've been doing lately, selling really good. So they're always looking at players that stand out in this Libertad. For me, that midfield just is weird. Ernesto Caballero, Sanabria, the way it's been playing lately. Maybe the only thing to stand out is Lorenzo Melgarejo, who has been so consistent with the goals. He became the captain of this team after Roque and Tacuara Cardoso left the locker room last year. And he's been taking over, not just being the captain, but also being the top scorer, which is something that we hadn't seen from him, playing more as a center forward this semester. And he's been really hot in that sense. He's been scoring, 8 goals so far in the last 10 games. So, no, 10 goals so far this season. So he's been doing great, guys. He's been killing it. He's 35, but he can still do his stuff out there, and he's probably more fit than ever. If he was probably this consistent with the goals last year, maybe he would have even made it to the World Cup. He would have probably had his opportunity at a certain point in a friendly, because Lorenzo Melgarejo is a player that can play in different spots. He even played defense in Russia. I remember him playing as a left back. So he can give you so many things, but he can't carry this team alone. And the rest of the players have not shown up. They don't have stars right now. So I don't see Libertad either making it through. I mean, just like I said before, the champions, the Paraguay champions of 2025, they don't look like they have enough to play this Libertadores. They don't look like they have enough to even compete in their group stage. I was really disappointed in Cerro Porteño, even more on Libertad, because this is the team that usually gets to the farthest in Libertadores. This is the team that usually makes it out of the group stage.
So you're saying that basically the team that is doing well this year is going to be the team that's going to be doing well in the group stages of the international competition. I'm talking about Olimpia.
Yeah, so far, Roberto, it looks that way, and even because of the group that Olimpia has for Libertad, maybe the good thing is that Rosario and Independiente ended up drawing, right? Independiente del Valle, and now they get the opportunity to face the big team at home, which is Rosario Central. If they can do something against Rosario, this could bring up the morale, this could bring up the team, but they need to get a result at home. They need to beat the favorite in this group, which is Rosario Central, with Di Maria and company. They're going to come with their stars, and they're one of the big teams in Argentina right now. They're going to come with a lot of fans from Rosario. So I'm looking into that match. I think this could be the match for Libertad to say, we're in the Libertadores for real, or we just don't have enough.
With the league really getting into, the nitty-gritty, Ralph, especially with, a couple games left in the season. Obviously, we still need to wait for a Super Clásico, which is happening next weekend. We'll talk about that, of course, but, Nacional plays Cerro Porteño this weekend. We got Olimpia taking on Rubio New. So really is both these two teams want to go to the Super Clásico as the title decider. Hey, look, and if Olimpia could drop points to Rubio New, and then of course Cerro Porteño beating their Barrio Red rivals, and obviously that would set up the difference to 1 point, I believe, if Olimpia don't win. Man, that would be a really good Super Clásico to see.
Yeah, I was just looking at the table there. It's like you say, it's Cerro have been playing so well. We just talked about their defeat, but they had won 7 in 8 games or something. Everything was going so well. Now they've got the tinkering from Holland trying to build his team how he wants it. But that's going to have been, well, I don't know how serious the injury was to Sonora, but that could have been kind of stopped, right? Because if he doesn't have Sonora, he's going to have to maybe revert to how Ashukara was playing, or even how Bava was playing, and so we end up coming back to this side, which was still winning games. But remember, so the way it's been this season is Olimpia has played Nacional, and then Cerro has played Nacional, and Nacional were fighting for the league at the beginning of the season. And remember, they beat Cerro in the first time round. And I think we talked about Felipe Jimenez, the coach, who had he had gone to Barrio Obrero and he had won games when he was at Dos de Mayo. So now, of course, is a bit different because again, Nacional are now out of it, right? Out of the title race. Olimpia beat them comfortably 3-0. So it's up to Cerro this time round to say, okay, now we're going to do the same that Olimpia just did and win the game. So that's really the key thing. If Olimpia drop points to Rubio New, I mean, it could happen. Rubio New are coming off the back of losing the Clásico. They lost it really badly. They lost 4-0 to Trinidense, which for me was surprising to see them lose that badly at Clásico because Gustavo Amorínigo has got them pretty organized. But I mean, I wouldn't assume that Rubio New are able to get anything against Olimpia. So really, the pressure's on Cerro to win, to take it, to keep that gap at 4 points, and then in the Clásico is when they can pull it back to one. And when the difference is 1 point, then for the whole title race, it's going to go down to the last day, and so the pressure is always there. But it's a big task because, like I was saying, the Nacional have done well against Cerro in the past. Felipe Jimenez has done well against Cerro in the past. I mean, Cerro is now coming off this game and they've got to think about the next match against Junior that we were just talking about is a must win. That's midweek. So there's a lot going through there, which is going to put pressure on how they even line up again in this game against Nacional, which is so key. But I think we've been saying for a long time, this is really Olympia's to lose. It's they're at the top. They're playing the best football. They've got the good rotation of players. They're not going to suffer as much. So it's on them. It's their title to lose as we go into what the last 8 games, 7 games
Yep.
now.
Yeah, Fede, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's still a couple of games where Olimpia can drop points. You look at the Super Clásico. After the Super Clásico, they have to play Libertad, and then they got Recoleta also on the way. They have smaller teams like Rubio New, San Lorenzo, which are games that you expect for them to win. But in those 3 games in particular, those could be tricky for this Olimpia side that's going to be distracted playing Sudamericana and traveling consistently now. And he's definitely going to be rotating players all the time. But I feel good about this Olimpia team because defensively, and Olvera has been standing out. So it's been really hard for other teams to score on Olimpia and manage the game against this team. I think Olympia's on a high. I don't think anybody has been up to their level. Cerro Porteño with their injuries is just going to get harder and harder for them. Even though the gap is just only 4 points, if Cerro Porteño drop a couple of games, it could be over, and we might be even be talking about Olimpia winning a championship 2 or 3 weeks before the end of the calendar. So I think it's more on Cerro Porteño to not lose a single game, especially this one and then the Super Clásico to really gain that momentum and carry themselves into that fight against Olimpia into the last games. That's what Cerro Porteño need to do. They need to catch up. So they need for Olimpia to lose at least 1 or 2 more games. And I just don't see it happening, guys, because after this Olimpia team lost against Trinidense, who showed their stuff in the Clásico again against Rubio New, this team has been really good this season, the Jose Arrua team of Trinidense, Olimpia bounced back. They look just like themselves already. So they lost the game, but they weren't affected by it. So I think Olimpia are the driver's seat, just like Raf has said all semester. And I don't see them losing it, guys. I don't see it getting away from that. I think they're going to win it. I don't know. I'm putting all my money out today. I'm saying some of these teams are going to be out of Libertadores. I'm saying Olimpia is going to be champions. But I just been feeling good about what Vitamina has brought to this team and the way that he's resolved all the problems that had come about.
You're really going in with all the takes, Fede. I love it. I love it as well from Ralph as well. And we'll, obviously talk about it as we always do here as we close out another great episode of Guarani Vision for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hanna. Thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.